apologizing most sincerely for the late start to this press briefing. We had hoped that we were going to start at the stipulated time at 11 o'clock. Please accept our sincere apologies for the delay. I will not take much of your time. Today we called you to this briefing so that the MDC Alliance will have a conversation with yourselves as members of the media on particularly the budget, the national budget, which was announced in the Parliament yesterday. The Alliance spokesperson or lead person or chair of the policy committee is Comrade Ndai-Biti, who is going to lead us in that briefing on behalf of the Alliance in that capacity. I'm therefore going to ask him to make the Alliance statement on the economy generally and on the national budget presented by Minister Chinamasa yesterday. Comrade, over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mutwe and other principals of the MDC Alliance. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I also want to join Prof. Mude in profiling our apology for starting late. These things require consensus, and we have to have a firm agreed position. Our country is on a knife edge.
Can you just come for this?
Our country is on a dangerous position, and it is very key for the MDC Alliance that we offer sustainable solutions to the national crisis. So the statement I will present today is not just a critique of what was done in Parliament yesterday, but it offers sustainable solutions to the challenges arresting our country. As you know, as the MDC Alliance, we have resolved that Zimbabwe must move towards the trajectory of a transformative democratic development state, and in this statement I will lay the foundations of that. I've already said that we are in a crisis. Crisis in respect of which we are moving from one order to another order, and we are in search of a new contract, of a new agreement between the citizen and the state. Regrettably, we witnessed on the 14th of November 2017 a serious assault on our constitution in the form of the military coup that took place in this country. As MDC Alliance, we are mindful of the fact that this, in fact, was not the first coup that took place in this country. In 2008, the MDC won an election in the election that was held on the 28th of March 2008. And the very same characters, the very same joke that was responsible for the events that evolved on the 14th of November 2017 conducted a preemptive coup in favor of one Robert Mugabe that prevented and hijacked the people's victory and the installation of Morgan Tsvangirai as the legitimate elected president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. So we see the events of November 2017 as the uninstalling of Robert Mugabe and the reinstallation of those that drove the 2008 coup. So as we are faced, as we sit here today, Zimbabwe is facing a crisis of legitimacy, a crisis in respect of which our constitution has been hijacked. So we submit as MDC Alliance that before we can talk about economic reform and economic agenda, it is important that we address the issue of legitimacy we address the agenda of our country goes back to legitimacy. And of course, we address the unfinished business, the captured business, the hijacked business of 2008. Number two, we have to address the issue of political and institutional reform. We now have a huge elephant in the living room as we sit here today, which is the existence of tanks in the streets of Harare, which is the existence of a new order, the military party state conflation. For 37 years, the visible expression of the regime was an obvious party state conflation. But after November of 2017, it is quite clear that we are now surviving in a new era, the era of a military party state conflation. So there is need for important political and institutional reform to ensure that we deflate this military party state conflation. So we require the implementation of important political and institutional reform. Number three, quite clearly we have to address the agenda of free, fair, legitimate, uncontested election. And very soon our Secretary for Elections will be providing and presenting a comprehensive report which speaks to these comprehensive reforms that we want to see before the next election. These reforms will include, number one, a role of the UN in our election. You know that as an alliance we already have a position that delegitimizes the Zimbabwe Election Commission. Number two is of course the issue of the voters' roll. Number three is liberalizing the media, reforms of the electoral reforms, repeal of the Public Order Security Act and IPA. I can go on, but the bottom line is that we need free and fair elections. Number four is of course addressing the economic crisis, and this is what I will be speaking about for most of the time in this presentation. Number six is of course attending to livelihoods of our people. 82% of our people are living below the poverty line, surviving on less than 35 cents a day. So addressing the issue of livelihoods, addressing the issue of poverty, that is arresting our people is going to be key. So the budget does not deal with these fundamental issues that have to be addressed before we move forward. We insist that there has to be a structural reform of the matrix of the polity of Zimbabwe as a nation state, and dealing with the issues that I've raised, the issues that we are raising above, the issues of legitimacy, the issues of political institutional reform, the issues of the economic crisis, the issues of the livelihoods of our people. Anything short of this does not address the fundamental crisis and does not set Zimbabwe on an irreversible and an irrevocable trajectory to sustainability, to transformation, to legitimacy, to democracy. I come now to the budget. We've always maintained that the fundamental problem affecting our economy was the ill discipline of the regime, its failure to live within its own means, and the perpetuation of a critical budget deficit, which we acknowledge that the budget statement understood and underscored the point that deficit financing and the budget deficit itself has created these distortions that have created the contradictions in our economy. The budget deficit has been financed through what the budget described as running an overdraft with the central bank, the issuance of toxic treasury bills, the inverted printing of money. So we were very interested in looking at how the budget itself was going to deal with the issue of the deficit. As all of you know, the budget deficit for 2017 is predicated to stand at 10% of GDP. In our own calculations, the true figure should actually be around 2.5 billion, and that would place the budget deficit 15% of GDP and over 60% of the total budget, when you consider that the 2017 budget was in fact a $4 billion budget, and they've already spent $2.5 billion before the end of the year, before their Zanu-PF Congress, which we know will be financed by Treasury. The 2018 budget is predicated on reducing the budget deficit to 4% of GDP, and a figure of $600 million is budgeted for as the budget deficit. In our view, we think that there are critical drivers of the budget deficit that will make attaining a budget cap of 4% not possible. And these are the drivers of the budget deficit in 2018. Number one, 2018 is an election year. The sum of $132 million was set aside for the election, but you and I know that the election will cost much more than that. Number two, we have a new creature on the scene. This is the enhanced command agriculture that now includes livestock and other crops, including soya beans. We have no doubt in our mind that enhanced command agriculture on its own will consume the sum of $1.5 billion. We know for a fact that between June and September of 2017, more than $1 billion was spent on command agriculture. So in 2018, in the context of an election year, the enhanced command agriculture will be a major driver of the budget deficit. Number three, Zanu-PF has to monetize their election promises. They made fundamental election promises in 2013, the building and the creation of 2.2 million jobs, the building of 500 primary schools. Some of these election promises have to be monetized, and again they will put pressure on the budget. Then of course the Zanu indiscipline. We know Zanu-PF. Zanu-PF is not capable of living within its means. Number four, they have to monetize the peace. By that I'm talking about huge payouts that will have to be made, including $10 million, which we know will be paid to President Mugabe. So monetizing the peace will involve the making of huge payouts inside the system, so that the new order can be accepted by the old order. So in our own view, the budget deficit in 2018 will be much worse than the 15% of 2017. And in our view, we calculate that the budget deficit will be around $3 billion, or at least 18% of GDP. And if we maintain the budget deficit, in the same unacceptable levels as existing now, it means the same distortions that are currently playing out now will continue evolving in 2018. So we will see huge raids on the central bank. We'll see the government maintaining the overdraft facility at the central bank, with the consequent result of cash shortages, with the consequent result of failure to finance the imports to the country, with the potential of shortages of goods as importers fail to pay for their imports, with the increase in the premium of the US dollar. Already we have seen the existence of multiple exchange rates. Already we have seen, since November of 2017, we have seen the rates of the RTGS to the US increasing. Right now, as I'm talking to you, the premium is 180%. That RTGS US dollars. We think that will hit very soon the 300% mark, which means that for every 100 US dollars that you require, you will have to spend 300 RTGS notes. And of course, that has an effect on inflation, which brings me to the macroeconomic framework. We are very critical of the macroeconomic framework. The macroeconomic framework is predicated on, number one, revenues of $5.7 billion, two, an inflation target of 3% 3, a growth rate of 4.5% in 2018. The growth rate of 4.5% in 2018 is predicated on the growth of agriculture 10.7%, mining 6.1%, electricity 28.5%. In other words, the key driver, the key underlying assumption of the 2018 growth rate is a strong performance in agriculture. But the fallacy, the faultiness of this assumption is this. We are already coming from a high base. 2016 to 2017 agricultural season was a season of overperformance because of the good rains that we had. So the anticipated agricultural input in 2017 in respect of the 2016-2017 year is over 25%. This is acknowledged in the budget. So because we already have a high base in 2016-2017, it's unlikely that we can grow exponentially as much as we have done in 2016-2017 because the growth rate is already high. 2016-2017 was a good agricultural season. It's very hard to imagine that we can improve on 2016-2017. So if the basis of the optimistic assumption of a 4.5% growth rate is a growth in agriculture, that falls because the elasticity of the growth in agriculture will be limited by the fact that 2016-2017 was already a good year. So we have to devalue these figures. And our own calculations is that bar election violence, bar disturbances which we see in 2018, we do not expect a growth rate that is beyond 2.5%. I come to inflation, the macroeconomic assumption of inflation. We already know that it's already above 3%. All of you, if you go to supermarkets, you know that the goods that you were buying with $100, you are now buying them with $30. So inflation is already above 3%. And the key driver of that is the multiple exchange rate. The key driver of that is the budget deficit that is being monetized through creative money creation, raiding the central bank, toxic treasury bill. So 3% is not achievable at all. We are already past it. And in some goods, inflation is already over 240%. So the projection of inflation is not realistic at all. Another macroeconomic figure which I want to deal with is the expected revenue of $5.7 billion. Where will this money come from? Industry has shut down, companies have shut down. In 2017, with the good agricultural season, you read in the budget that the expected revenue in 2017 is $3.5 billion. So it is hard to imagine what miracle can come out of the bag to explain the huge growth in revenue from $3.5 billion to $5.1 billion. So in our respectful view, as the MDC Alliance, the anticipated figure of $5.1 billion is not an achievable figure. But the one figure that they will achieve, and we have to give them credit, is the expenditure figure. The expenditure figure is $5.74 billion. And we would like to submit that they will exceed this. So we have to clap the hands for them. They will exceed $5.74 billion because of the expenditure pressures that I've already explained. So we submit that the macroeconomic framework of the 2018 budget is made on false and dishonest and unrealistic assumptions for all the reasons that I've explained above. I want to deal with the normative lipstick reforms that are in the 2018 budget. We submit that the attempt to deal with the wage bill through the elimination of 3,000 or so youth officers, the attempt at repealing the Indigenization and Empowerment Act, the attempt at reining in government expenditure, particularly through the curtailing of travel allowance and travel conditions, are things that ought to have been done many years ago. We've been arguing that these things ought to be done, but they are nominal. They are nominal, they are normative, they are lipstick. And I will come to our own solutions to demonstrate the limited nature of these reforms. They scratch the surface. If you eliminate 3,000 youth officers, where you have ghost workers of over 200,000, then you've got a challenge. The inclusive government used to pay 236,000 civil servants. They are now paying 550,000 civil servants. So 200,000 of those are ghost workers. So if you are going to eliminate 3,000, when you are faced with 200,000, that's a lipstick. So I will deal with that when I come to our own solutions. The other thing which we are very critical of in the 2018 budget is the government position on the issue of devolution. In terms of section 299 and section 300 of the Constitution, the budget must provide equitable resources to all provinces. That has not been done. But as if that was not enough, you have a budget statement that actually says that the institution of reform, of devolution and decentralization, codified in chapter 14 of our constitution, must actually be repealed. But devolution was one of the deal breakers in the constitutional making exercise. Those who are following the constitutional making process will actually remember that on the 17th of January 2013, the MDC political parties actually walked away from the negotiating table after Zanu had insisted that they were not going to carry out the issue of devolution. And you also recall that during the constitutional making exercise, the issue of devolution was number one in the public consultations, the over 3 million people that were consulted. So we are very much against the pronouncement on the issue of devolution and the fact that there's been non-compliance with the constitution. I now come to our own proposals, and here I want to underscore that we are offering an alternative vision. We are offering an alternative narrative to the budget that was presented yesterday. So we have 10 points that we are going to speak to. The first issue is that of the political crisis that is arresting our country. So we need to go beyond the lipstick of economic reforms, the lipstick of a budget, and address the structural challenges facing our country. Number one is the issue we have already spoken of, the issue of returning the country to legitimacy. The issue also of reconfiguring the state. How do we reconfigure the state when the state now has an appetite of multiple coups, the coup of 2008 and the coup of 2017. So we've got a bigger problem than what we had before the 14th of November 2017. How do we reconstitute the state to ensure that tanks are not on the streets of Zimbabwe again? Resolving the political crisis includes agreeing on an agenda for free and fair elections and the reforms attending to the same. Resolving the political crisis means agreeing on a transitional agenda between now and the time that the country is ready to hold the next election. So that's number one. Without this, anything we do will be lip service. Without this, anything we do will simply mean that we will head off from one crisis to another and will continue to be in the news for wrong reasons. Number two, macroeconomic stability. it is so important for the country to have macroeconomic stability. It is so important that we have to eliminate deficit financing. It is so important that we have to live within our means. And we propose as MDC Alliance that we must resort to and revert to cash budgeting, the principle which we used to call we eat what we kill. And we propose that the budget deficit of any type, whether it's 10%, whether it's 6%, must be eliminated, and we must go to a regime of fiscal balancing. Our books must balance. So macroeconomic stability is so key. Without macroeconomic stability, we will continue with the regime of the instability and toxicity that we are seeing in this economy. As part of macroeconomic stability, we propose as MDC Alliance that we have to audit, there has to be a forensic audit of the current government debt. If you look at the budget presented yesterday, it skirts a lot on the current levels of domestic debt. This is because the debt keeps on piling up. Illegal payments and extra legal payments still continue to be made. So any new government of the day must conduct a forensic audit of the government debt. Was this debt contracted in terms of the Constitution? Because the Constitution says any charge on the Consolidated Revenue Fund must be approved by Parliament. And we maintain and submit that this regime is accruing debt outside Parliament and outside the scrutiny of Parliament. Hence, we demand this forensic government audit. Number 3, our economy has been limping since 2012. So as the MDC Alliance, the cornerstone of our economic blueprint towards a democratic developmental state will be the pursuit of inclusive shared growth at the rate of 7% per annum in real terms, to create a $100 billion economy within the next 12 years. And some of the things that we believe need to be done are the following. Number 1, total repeal of the Indigenization and Empowerment Law. We don't understand why the sectors of platinum and diamonds are reserved. What is the difference between gold and platinum? What is the difference between chrome and diamonds? But we propose, in place of the current empowerment law, a new comprehensive empowerment law that gives credit to companies who invest in education, in technology, in rural development for the upliftment of our people. So we are not just advocating for the blanket review of the current indigenization empowerment law. Our submission is that empowerment is not just the mere owning of shares. Empowerment is about broad matrix of development, particularly rural development. Number 2, we will concentrate on attracting foreign direct investment. We believe that the MDC Alliance team is a trusted team, and we should be able to attract foreign direct investment. Also, we believe that there should have been recapitalization of DMAF and ZREF. Companies are struggling, companies are suffering, and it was important to set up an industrial fund so that these companies can borrow and mature. So as MDC Alliance, we believe in recapitalizing DMAF and the ZREF. G, the leveraging of mining and manufacturing sector. By African standards, we are a fairly diversified and fairly industrialized country. So that the leveraging of mining and manufacturing will be key. Number 4 is financial sector reform, which we didn't hear the budget speak to yesterday. There is a huge financial crisis in our country. There's a cash shortage, there's a liquidity problem. And we propose as MDC Alliance, number 1, that we need to demonetize the bond note. Number 2, that as a matter of urgency, we need to make an application to join the Rand Monetary Union. But in doing so, we have to attend to key macroeconomic convergent figures to align our economy with the economy of the Rand Monetary Union. So we have to get right the ratio of our debt to GDP, the net present value of our exports to GDP, the level of our imports to GDP. Because if we don't do that, then we will export our challenges to the Rand Monetary Union. We also propose, as part of the financial sector reform, that we need to ring-fence the current existing balances in people's accounts so that we protect them against the regime of inflation and multiple exchange rates that is set in our economy. Our people suffered in 2008, they lost value. There's a data that they will lose value now, particularly pensioners. So we propose to ring-fence balances in people's accounts right now so that we protect them against the ravages of the new threat of inflation. Number 6, we propose that Zimbabwe must pursue the dream and polity of regional integration. The Zimbabwean market is less than 2 million. If we join a SADC monetary union, there is a market of 300 million already. Number 7 is the pursuit of industrialization and the alteration of the accumulation model from one which is based on extraction in the mining sector, extraction in the agricultural sector, to one based on beneficiation and value addition. That speaks for itself. Number 8 is very key. We call this expenditure retrenchment. And on this issue, we propose 2 critical things. Number 1 is the reform of the public sector wage bill. The current situation where the wage bill is consuming 97% of total expenditure is not good enough. So we propose that the 200,000 ghost workers that they are in the system should be retired and retrenched, not dealing with the petty figures of 3,000. State-owned enterprises. We propose that the bulk of state-owned enterprises that are currently existing should be liquidated. We're talking of useless things like Air Zimbabwe and so forth. So there is a need to pursue a vigorous program of state-owned enterprises. And we've got 10 companies that we are targeting, immediately. Number 3 is a section that is very dear to the MDC Alliance, and we're calling it monetizing democracy, making our democracy real. And here we propose funding and strengthening Chapter 13 institutions. And Chapter 13 institutions include your Anti-Corruption Commission. The scourge of corruption is huge in this country. And one of the things which was left out yesterday is the important need for a forensic audit on our diamonds. What happened to our diamond? So we propose as MDC Alliance, as part of strengthening our institutions, that there must be a judicial forensic audit into our diamonds from 2006 to now. Chapter 13 institutions include the Human Rights Commission, the Gender Commission, the Peace and Reconciliation Commission. These have to be monetized, these have to be strengthened. B is the issue of devolution. We believe that devolution is the cornerstone of resolving the national question in Zimbabwe. So in MDC Alliance government would monetize and actualize Chapter 14 of our constitution, if not improve the compromise, weak solution in Chapter 14. Number 9, something that was not spoken of yesterday, is resolving the land question. We have to make sure that the land market is retained in Zimbabwe. Anyone with a piece of land must have a title deed, and the title deed that he or she is free to use it as he or she wishes, whether selling it, whether hypothecating it. And this is a key cornerstone of the MDC Alliance agenda, including as well resolving the challenge of multiple farm owners, resolving the challenge of unpaid compensation. Lastly, number 10 is international relations. Key on international relations is resolving Zimbabwe's debt question. We do not believe in Lima, and we will move away from Lima, and we will pursue as the MDC Alliance a program that involves the multilateral debt relief initiative of 2004. But for us to succeed on that, we have to have reform. We have to stop stealing elections. We have to stop putting tanks on the roads of Zimbabwe. We have to make sure that people don't disappear in Zimbabwe. And that's why we are going for a process that is underwritten by the international community on international relations. On international relations, it means we have to make peace with London, with Brussels, with Beijing, and with Washington, DC. So this is our alternative roadmap towards a Zimbabwe that is sustainable, a Zimbabwe that is transformative, a Zimbabwe that is developmental, a Zimbabwe that is democratic. I thank you very much. I'll answer the purely economic ones, then I'll leave my colleagues to answer. The issue of land is an economic question. and the issue of land has actually been resolved in the Constitution, in Chapter 16 of the Constitution. So what we are proposing is not new. What we are proposing is actually in the Constitution. So all that needs to be done is to implement the Constitution. So the Constitution makes the following proposal. Number one, that the issue of land must be democratized. So every Zimbabwean, red, green, yellow, blue, must be free to own land and to apply for land. This also includes members of us, the opposition, who didn't participate in the land reform in 2000. The new constitution now says every citizen has got a right to apply for land, and citizens should do that. But when you have this land, you have to use it productively. But you can't use it productively because you don't have money. If you want to make someone poor in Zimbabwe, give him a farm. So to make it productive, someone has to go and borrow. There has to be a business model. The Rhodesian economy was sustained by rural agriculture, the rural bourgeoisie, because they were able to borrow. Up until 1999, 74% of all banking lending in Zimbabwe went to agriculture. But now it's not there because farmers don't have title deeds. So if you want to complete the land reform revolution, and it's incomplete right now because farmers only have use value without exchange value. And if a commodity has got use value without exchange value, it's a dead asset, it's dead capital. So to make it a live asset, there must be use value and exchange value. So as MDC Alliance, we're saying, make this product called land a live asset. Allow farmers to go and realize value by going to banks, by mortgaging their assets so that they can farm their farming operations. So it is a correct economic decision. It also addresses another political issue. Farmers are held at ransom by Zanu-PF because if they move, the offer letter will be withdrawn. But once they have title deeds, they can't move. And I can assure you, this is one of the issues that the new authorities are not going to move. Because once they give people title deeds, people will be free like birds. They will fly away from the Zanu-PF nest. And that's why there was quiet mootness in the budget on the land question. And that's why we've put it as number 9 on our agenda.
Yes, I think you raised the question on whether or not members of parliament are going to support the budget. It's currently configured. The budget is very difficult to support. It is difficult to support, especially when regard is held to all meaningful members of parliament who represent the people. Number one, the budget did not address the threshold that is required in terms of the Abuja Declaration on health. I think we're almost like 406 million. 406 is not sufficient. We are supposed to have a 15% threshold. It is less than the 15%. I think it's about 6 to 7%. If you were to do the configuration, 5.something%, which is a far cry in terms of what is required. But not only that, there's also an assault on the informal economy. Our economy is informalized. We've seen vendors being attacked left, right, and center. This is the source of livelihood for the majority of our people. Government is silent about it. The army is wreaking havoc on those vendors. Routing on the vendors, instead of eliminating poverty, they choose to eliminate individuals who are trying to deal with poverty. It is a problem for us as members of parliament to just leave it as it is. There's also the issue of the deployment of the military on the borders. It does not inspire confidence. In fact, we have a fundamental problem, Honorable Leader, on two issues. We were supposed to hear more about productivity. There's nothing that is said about productivity in that budget. So we don't understand how they are going then to stimulate the confidence that is necessary. But what also buffers the confidence is the deployment of soldiers on the borders and the continued presence of soldiers on the streets. It does not inspire confidence within business, within the citizens. But also, you are saying that business is accepted this budget. They have no option. They are drowning people, they are sinking people, they will clutch on straws. But this is not what they deserve. Where Chinamasa is promising them to say that we are going to have an age threshold of 65, it should not be limited to civil servants. If they are serious about reform, We want to see government ministers who are above 65 being retired. But they are not serious, so they will just want to be perfunctory in their promises. If they are serious about retrenchment, I think Honorable Bite has already touched on it. Instead of limiting to 3,000, go to the ghost workers who are all over. But you can see that the 3,000 are actually G40 people. So it's a factionalized retrenchment. I think they've done their number crunching, and it's a G40 thing. You still have, even if you don't agree with Kasuku and Jonathan, you can't have a country where bank accounts of individuals are closed without due regard to the rule of law. It does not inspire confidence. You go on the farms, people's farms are being invaded. There's no security on the farms. There's no property right. Those issues are not in the budget, and they are supposed to be addressed. So this issue, you promise chiefs that we are going to buy cars for you, and then you disappoint them. It does not inspire confidence. Give the chiefs what you promised them. We want our chiefs to be happy, but we also want to undermine, unnecessary expenditure. So these are issues that are going to be problematic for us to support. Even the pensioners. Pensioners have lost a lot of money. It is not covered in the budget to say those who have lost money, and this is what we are going to do as an MDC alliance. Once we go in, we must review those who lost their pensions and say, let them be compensated because they were contributing to pension funds. And these pension funds, they are investments that are supposed to be liquidated so that there's benefit to people who have lost their savings. So I would say we are not going to just take it line and absorb it, hook, line and sinker. We will take them to adjust the budget and be serious about the kind of budget that is going to be in Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's only one question, I think, which remains on the roadmap out of the crisis of legitimacy that I need perhaps to deal with in terms of what is proposed. Comrade, we covered some of the issues, but understand the point first that Comrade BT made, that we had a continuum of illegitimacy all the way, at the very least, from 2008 to date. And we need to resolve that continuum of illegitimacy by ensuring that we hold palpably free and fair elections, where the sovereign right of the people of Zimbabwe to elect a government of their choice is fully and unconditionally recognized. And in our election reform program and demands, you will find the things that ought to be done. I will just highlight some of the key ones for you, which will ensure that we can, down the line, hold palpably and free, uncontestably free and fair elections where a president and a parliament is elected through the free will of the people. The first precondition is, of course, the reconstitution of ZEC into a properly, totally independent electoral commission. It is not adequate to twist Rita Makarau to resign because she might be perceived, or she might have been seen as sympathetic to the G40 faction in Zanu-PF. You need a complete overhaul of ZEC. You need people to be appointed to ZEC through the constitutional process, which is open, which is accountable, and those people must not be factional people who will be seen as advancing the agenda of either the military or Lacoste. As two, the soldiers must go back to their barracks. It is absolutely imperative that the soldiers, whether they are deployed in the townships in Harare, in the townships in Kwekwe, they should go back to the barracks. That is where they belong. Zimbabwe is not in a state of war. Their constitutional obligation is to defend Zimbabwe from external aggression. and they should return to the barracks yesterday, so that as we move towards elections, there is no appearance of any military among our people who might be perceived as likely to intimidate people into not exercising their democratic will. 3, the police, who previously have played a critical role in closing political space, abusing POSA, etc., etc., must also go back to their police camps. They must deal with true criminals. They must get off our roads. They must ensure that their job is confined to dealing with criminals. 4, media space and media freedom. All media, including state media, must be completely and unconditionally free. It is not enough to let the media move from the captivity of G40 into the captivity of Lacoste. It's just not enough. You must completely unfree the media. 5, the right and freedom to canvass, to mobilize people, must be fully restored, so that any individual, any political party has access to all voters, regardless of where they are located, in the suburbs, in the townships, in the resettlement area. There must be unconditional free access by everyone to the electorate. 6, we need to implement the electoral reforms that we've spoken about, beginning with, for instance, extending the current voter registration exercise, ensuring that all the people who are being disenfranchised so far are refranchised, ensuring that all the bottlenecks around proof of residence are eliminated. Every citizen, wherever they are, should be able to walk to a registration center and on production of their identity documents showing that you are a citizen, are able to register so that they can cast their vote in 2018. So these are some of the things that must happen, leading to a free and fair election. And if we have nothing to hide, we must be able to allow everyone, local, international, to come and observe our election. Only those who have something to hide will keep shutting out observation of our election. So that's the roadmap. Part of the critical things that ought to happen is the roadmap to a restoration of legitimacy. Above all, at the end of this exercise, everyone, political parties, political leaders, the military, the securocrats, must undertake to accept the verdict of the people unconditionally. And they must say so in advance. And on the day of the election, they must accept the result of the outcome of the sovereign right. So those are some of the things that ought to be done. In the roadmap to reversing the first coup of 2008 and going back to uncontested legitimacy. I think we have been here long enough. And we thank you very much for coming to this briefing. And good luck. We hope to see you soon.
I am reliably informed.
For these and other stories, visit our website www.263chat.com. Follow us on Twitter @263chat and like our Facebook page 263chat.